In a quiet little town called Willow Creek, where life moved at its own relaxed pace, there was a small karate dojo tucked away on the corner of Maple Street. It wasn't fancy, just a modest building with faded wooden floors and walls covered in motivational posters about discipline and respect. But for many kids in the neighborhood, it was more than just a place to learn kicks and punches. It was a space where they could feel strong, confident, and part of something bigger. The man behind this dojo was Coach Victor Kane. He wasn't particularly tall or muscular, but his sharp voice and stern expression made him seem larger than life. To most of the students, he was both respected and feared. On one hand, he pushed them hard, teaching them skills that would stay with them for life. On the other hand, his temper could flare without warning, leaving even the toughest kids feeling uneasy. Still, no one doubted his dedication to martial arts. His motto hung proudly on the wall: "Discipline is the key to mastery." Among the students training under Coach Kane was a shy girl named Mia. She was 12 years old, with curly hair tied neatly into a ponytail and eyes that always seemed to be searching for approval. Unlike some of her classmates who came from families with long martial arts traditions, Mia had only recently started learning karate. Her inspiration? Her grandfather, Jack Thompson. Now, Jack wasn't your average grandpa. Sure, he baked cookies, told funny stories, and loved watching old westerns on TV. But what set him apart was his past. Back in the 1970s, Jack had been known as the Iron Fist, a world champion in Kyokushin karate. People traveled from all over the globe to see him fight, marveling at his speed, strength, and unshakable focus. However, fame didn't sit well with Jack. After retiring, he chose to live a simple life, rarely speaking about his glory days unless someone asked directly. Mia idolized her grandfather. From the time she was little, he'd teach her how to throw a punch using pillows as targets. "Remember, sweetheart," he'd say, "it's not about hitting hard, it's about hitting right." Those lessons stuck with her, and when she decided to join the dojo, Jack gave her his full support. One crisp afternoon, the air buzzing with energy, Coach Kane gathered his students for a discussion before practice began. "All right, listen up," he barked, pacing back and forth. "Today I want to talk about legends. Who here knows someone famous in martial arts history? Someone who inspired you to start training?" A few hands shot up hesitantly. One boy mentioned Bruce Lee, another talked about Jackie Chan. Then, after a moment of silence, Mia slowly raised her hand. Her heart pounded as all eyes turned toward her. "Yes, Mia," Coach Kane said, raising an eyebrow. My grandpa was a world champion," she mumbled, her voice barely above a whisper. For a split second, the room fell silent. Then, Coach Kane let out a loud scoff. "A world champion? Really?" he sneered, crossing his arms. "What's his name, huh? Did he win some local tournament or something?" Mia felt her face grow hot. She glanced down at her feet, unsure how to respond. Before she could say anything, though, Coach Kane stepped closer, his tone dripping with mockery. "You think making up stories will impress me? This isn't a fairy tale, kid. We deal with facts here." And then, without warning, he slapped her across the face. The sound echoed through the dojo like a thunderclap. Everyone froze, their mouths hanging open in shock. Mia stumbled backward, tears welling up in her eyes. She pressed a hand against her stinging cheek, too stunned to speak. "That's enough lying for today," Coach Kane snapped, turning away dismissively. "Now get back to practice." But the damage was done. The other students exchanged horrified glances, unsure whether to comfort Mia or stay out of trouble. No one dared challenge Coach Kane. Not yet, anyway. As Mia stood there, humiliated and hurt, she realized something deep inside her had shifted. For weeks, she'd tried so hard to prove herself in the dojo, to show everyone she belonged. But now, standing alone in the middle of the mat, she wondered if she'd ever truly fit in. Little did anyone know, this moment would spark a chain of events that would change the entire dojo, and perhaps even the town of Willow Creek forever. Mia trudged home that evening, her cheeks still flushed with embarrassment and her heart heavy with shame. She clutched her karate bag tightly, as if it could shield her from the world. The slap had stung, not just on her face but deep inside her chest. It wasn't just the physical pain. It was the humiliation of being called a liar in front of everyone. Worse still, she hadn't even been lying. Her grandfather really was a world champion. Why didn't Coach Kane believe her? When she walked through the door, her grandmother noticed immediately that something was wrong. "Sweetheart, what happened?" she asked, setting down the spoon she'd been using to stir a pot of soup. Mia hesitated, tears welling up again. She hated crying. It made her feel weak, but she couldn't hold it in anymore. Between sobs, she told her grandmother everything. How Coach Kane had mocked her, how he'd slapped her, and how everyone in the dojo had watched silently without stepping in to help. Her grandmother's face turned pale with anger. "That man has no right to treat you like that," she exclaimed, shaking her head. "Wait till your grandpa hears about this." At the mention of her grandfather, Mia froze. "No, please don't tell him," she pleaded. "He'll be so disappointed in me. He always says martial arts is about respect, and I let Coach Kane embarrass me. What if he thinks I'm not tough enough?" Her grandmother knelt beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Mia, you're stronger than you think, and your grandpa would never be disappointed in you for speaking the truth. If anything, he'll want to know why someone treated his granddaughter so unfairly." Reluctantly, Mia nodded. Later that evening, when her grandfather returned from his daily walk, her grandmother filled him in on what had happened. Jack listened quietly, his weathered face unreadable as he absorbed every detail. When she finished, there was a long pause. Then slowly Jack stood up, his jaw tightening. "I need to have a word with this coach," he said firmly, his voice low but steady. Mia's eyes widened. "Grandpa, no. Please don't go there. I don't want to make things worse." Jack turned to her, his expression softening. "Mia, sometimes standing up for yourself means facing the people who hurt you. This isn't just about you, it's about teaching that man a lesson he clearly needs to learn." The next evening, Mia found herself walking back to the dojo with her grandfather by her side. She felt a strange mix of dread and relief. On one hand, she was terrified of what might happen if Coach Kane saw Jack. On the other hand, having her grandfather there gave her a sense of security she hadn't felt in days. As they approached the dojo, the faint sound of kicks and grunts drifted through the open windows. Inside, Coach Kane was demonstrating a spinning kick to a group of students, his voice booming as usual. When he noticed Mia standing near the doorway, his brow furrowed. "You're late," he snapped, pointing at her. "And who's this?" His gaze shifted to Jack, taking in the older man's worn jeans, faded flannel shirt, and calloused hands. "This is my grandpa," Mia said quietly, clutching Jack's arm for support. Coach Kane smirked, clearly unimpressed. "Oh, so the world champion finally shows up, huh? Let me guess, you were too busy winning trophies to teach your granddaughter how to fight properly?" Jack didn't react to the sarcasm. Instead, he stepped forward, meeting Coach Kane's gaze head-on. "My name is Jack Thompson," he said calmly but firmly. "I believe you accused my granddaughter of lying yesterday." For a moment, Coach Kane looked confused. Then realization dawned on his face, followed quickly by skepticism. "Jack Thompson?" he repeated, crossing his arms. "Never heard of you." A murmur rippled through the room as some of the older students exchanged glances. One of them whispered, "Wait, isn't that the guy who won the Kyokushin championship back in the 70s? Before anyone could respond, the door creaked open again. Everyone turned to see who had entered, and gasped collectively. Standing in the doorway, framed by the golden light of the setting sun, was none other than Chuck Norris. Chuck Norris wasn't just any celebrity. To martial artists, he was a living legend, a symbol of strength, skill, and humility. His presence in Willow Creek was already big news because of a charity event he'd agreed to attend. But no one expected him to show up at the local dojo, especially not during such a tense situation. "Am I interrupting something?" Chuck asked, his tone casual, but his piercing blue eyes scanning the room. Coach Kane's smug expression faltered instantly. For a moment, he seemed at a loss for words. Finally, he managed to stammer, "No, sir, we were just—" Chuck raised a hand to stop him. I heard about an incident here involving one of your students, he said, cutting straight, to the point. Mind telling me what happened? All eyes turned to Coach Kane, who now looked like a deer caught in headlights. He glanced nervously at Jack, then at Mia, before blurting out, "She claimed her grandfather was a world champion. How was I supposed to know she was telling the truth?" Chuck arched an eyebrow. "So you hit her because you didn't believe her?" "It was discipline," Coach Kane insisted, though his voice wavered. "I can't tolerate dishonesty in my dojo." Chuck shook his head, his disappointment evident. "Honesty is important, sure. But violence, that's not discipline, that's fear disguised as control." The room fell silent. Even the students stopped moving, their attention glued to the unfolding drama. Chuck turned to Jack, extending a hand. "Mr. Thompson, it's an honor to meet you. I've read about your matches. You were incredible." Jack accepted the handshake with a nod. "Thank you. I try to live by the principles of martial arts: respect, integrity, and humility. Unfortunately, it seems those values have been forgotten in some places." Coach Kane winced, knowing the comment was directed at him. But before he could defend himself, Chuck added, "If you're truly curious about whether Mr. Thompson is who he says he is, maybe we should settle this the old-fashioned way, on the mat." A ripple of excitement ran through the crowd. Sparring with Jack Thompson in front of Chuck Norris? No one wanted to miss this. Coach Kane hesitated, suddenly aware of how much was at stake. Refusing would make him look cowardly, but accepting meant risking total humiliation. After a long pause, his pride got the better of him. "Fine," muttered. "Let's do it." Jack removed his flannel shirt, revealing lean muscles shaped by decades of training. Despite his age, he moved with purpose, tying his belt around his waist as if preparing for battle. Coach Kane, meanwhile, stretched awkwardly, trying to mask his growing unease. When they faced each other on the mat, the contrast between them was striking. Jack stood relaxed yet alert, his posture exuding confidence without arrogance. Coach Kane, on the other hand, bounced on the balls of his feet, his movements stiff and overeager. "Begin," Chuck announced, stepping back to give them space. What followed was nothing short of mesmerizing. Coach Kane charged forward, throwing a flurry of punches and kicks designed to overwhelm his opponent. But Jack simply sidestepped each attack, his movements fluid and precise. Every time Kane thought he had an opening, Jack countered effortlessly, landing gentle taps that sent clear messages. "You're predictable. Slow down. Think." Within minutes, Coach Kane was panting, his earlier bravado crumbling under the weight of Jack's mastery. Desperation took over and he lunged wildly, leaving himself wide open. In one swift motion, Jack swept Kane's legs out from under him, sending him crashing to the mat. The room erupted into murmurs of disbelief. No one, not even Chuck Norris, had expected the match to end so decisively. Jack extended a hand to help Kane up, his expression calm and respectful. "This isn't about winning or losing," he said softly. "It's about learning. Martial arts is a journey, not a destination." Coach Kane stared at him, shame washing over his face. For the first time, he realized how far he'd strayed from the true spirit of the art he claimed to love. As the students applauded, Chuck stepped forward, clapping slowly. "Well done, Mr. Thompson," he said with a smile. "And Coach Kane, remember this moment. Respect isn't given, it's earned." With those words, the atmosphere in the dojo shifted. What had started as a confrontation was now a lesson, one that would leave a lasting impact on everyone present. The silence in the dojo was palpable after Jack helped Coach Kane back to his feet. The students watched with wide eyes, unsure of what would happen next. Some were still processing the fact that the man they'd been mocking just moments ago was indeed a world champion. Others couldn't believe how effortlessly Jack had dismantled Coach Kane's aggressive attacks. It wasn't brute force or flashy moves that won the match. It was experience, precision, and an unshakable calmness. Coach Kane stood there, breathing heavily, his ego bruised far worse than his body. His face burned red, not from exertion, but from shame. He glanced around the room, seeing the mix of admiration for Jack and disappointment in him reflected in his students' eyes. For years, he'd prided himself on being the authority figure in the dojo, the one who demanded respect through fear. But now, standing before a man twice his age who had humbled him without malice, he realized how hollow that respect really was. Chuck Norris broke the tension with a slow clap, his voice steady but firm as he addressed the room. "That, right there," he said, gesturing toward Jack, "is what martial arts is truly about. Strength isn't measured by how hard you can hit. It's measured by how well you control yourself and honor the spirit of the art." He turned to Coach Kane, his piercing gaze locking onto the younger man. "You've got skills, no doubt, but skill alone doesn't make you a teacher. A real sensei inspires, guides, and earns trust. You slapped a child yesterday because she spoke the truth. That's not discipline. That's cruelty disguised as authority. And if you don't change your ways, you'll lose more than just your students' respect. You'll lose their faith in the art itself." Coach Kane swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing visibly. He opened his mouth to respond but found no words. Instead, he nodded slowly, his shoulders slumping under the weight of Chuck's words. Jack stepped forward then, his tone gentle but unwavering. "I'm not here to embarrass you," he said, addressing both Coach Kane and the students. "I came because my granddaughter deserved to be believed. She didn't lie, and she didn't deserve to be treated like she did. But this moment isn't just about her. It's about all of you. Martial arts teaches us to protect, to persevere, and to respect others. If we forget those lessons, we're not practicing karate. We're just throwing punches." The room erupted into applause, spontaneous and heartfelt. Even Coach Kane joined in weakly, though his hands trembled as he clapped. Mia, who had been standing quietly near the edge of the mat, felt tears streaming down her face, but this time, they weren't tears of pain or humiliation. They were tears of relief, pride, and gratitude. Her grandfather hadn't just defended her, he'd reminded everyone, including her, what it meant to stand tall with integrity. After the applause died down, Chuck Norris motioned for everyone to gather closer. "Let's talk about something important," he said, his voice warm yet commanding. "Every single person in this room has potential. Potential to grow stronger, smarter, and kinder. But potential means nothing unless you nurture it. Coach Kane," he looked directly at the man, "you have a chance to turn this around. Apologize sincerely, learn from this, and start leading with compassion instead of fear. Your students will follow you if you lead with heart." Coach Kane took a deep breath, visibly struggling with his emotions. Finally, he turned to Mia and her grandfather. I owe you both an apology," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "Mia, I shouldn't have hit you. I let my temper get the better of me. And I disrespected not only you but also your family. Mr. Thompson, I underestimated. You and I was wrong to do so. Please forgive me." Jack nodded graciously, accepting the apology without hesitation. "We all make mistakes," he said simply. "What matters is what we do after we realize them." Mia hesitated for a moment before stepping forward. She looked Coach Kane in the eye, her voice soft but clear. "Thank you for apologizing. I just want to train and get better. That's why I'm here." Her words struck a chord with everyone in the room. Here was a young girl, barely 12 years old, showing maturity and grace far beyond her years. Coach Kane blinked rapidly, clearly moved. "You're stronger than I gave you credit for," he admitted. "Stronger than most people I know. I promise to be a better coach, not just for you but for everyone here." The atmosphere in the dojo shifted entirely. The tension that had filled the air earlier was replaced with a sense of unity and hope. Students began chatting excitedly, asking Jack questions about his championship days and marveling at his technique. Chuck Norris stayed for a while longer, sharing stories from his own journey and offering advice to anyone who approached him. For Mia, the rest of the evening felt surreal. Kids who had once ignored her or teased her now crowded around her, eager to hear more about her grandfather's accomplishments. One boy even asked if she could teach him some of the moves Jack had used during the sparring match. For the first time since joining the dojo, Mia felt like she truly belonged. As the session wound down, Chuck Norris pulled Jack aside for a private conversation. "You handled that beautifully," Chuck said, shaking Jack's hand again. "Not. Many people could have walked into a situation like that and turned it into a teaching moment." Jack chuckled softly, rubbing the back of his neck. "To be honest, I wasn't sure I wanted to come here tonight. I left the competitive world behind for a reason. I didn't want the fame or the pressure. But when I heard what happened to Mia, I knew I had to step in. She's my granddaughter, and she deserved to see that standing up for yourself doesn't mean picking fights. It means doing what's right." Chuck nodded, clearly impressed. "Well, you've inspired a lot of people tonight, including me. If you ever feel like sharing your story with a wider audience, let me know. There's a whole generation of martial artists who could benefit from hearing about your journey." Jack smiled modestly. "We'll see. For now, I think I've done enough talking. Besides, I've got cookies waiting for me at home." Chuck laughed, patting Jack on the shoulder. "Fair enough. Just promise me one thing. Don't disappear completely. The world needs more legends like you." As the two men parted ways, Jack rejoined Mia, who was packing up her gear. "Ready to go home?" he asked, ruffling her hair affectionately. Mia grinned, nodding enthusiastically. "Yeah, Grandpa. But can we come back tomorrow? I think I finally understand what you've been trying to teach me." Jack's smile widened. "Of course, sweetheart. This is just the beginning." On their way out, they passed Coach Kane, who was busy cleaning up the dojo. He stopped when he saw them, offering a small, respectful bow. "Thank you again," he said sincerely. "And thank you, Mia, for reminding me why I started teaching in the first place." Mia returned the bow awkwardly, still getting used to the newfound respect she was receiving. As she and Jack walked home under the starlit sky, she couldn't help but feel a renewed sense of purpose. Life had thrown her a curveball, but instead of letting it break her, she'd risen above it, with a little help from her grandpa and an unexpected visit from a living legend. Back at the dojo, Coach Kane sat alone for a while, reflecting on everything that had happened. He thought about the values he claimed to uphold and how far he'd strayed from them. But instead of wallowing in regret, he made a silent vow. From now on, he would lead with kindness, patience, and humility. Because if Jack Thompson could return to the mat after decades away and inspire an entire room of people, then surely he could find it within himself to become the teacher his students deserved. And so, what had begun as a dark chapter in the dojo's history ended with a glimmer of hope, a reminder that even the hardest hearts can soften when met with courage, wisdom, and compassion. The days following the showdown at the dojo brought a wave of change that rippled through Willow Creek like a gentle breeze stirring still waters. Coach Kane, once known for his sharp tongue and iron-fisted rule, began to transform in ways no one expected. It wasn't an overnight miracle. He stumbled often, slipping back into old habits, but he was trying, and that made all the difference. For starters, he stopped yelling during practice sessions. Instead of barking orders or punishing mistakes, with laps around the mat, he started explaining techniques more patiently. When a student struggled with a move, he'd kneel beside them, breaking down each step until they got it right. The fear that used to hang over the dojo like a storm cloud slowly lifted, replaced by a sense of camaraderie and mutual respect. One evening, after dismissing the students, Coach Kane stayed behind to clean up. As he wiped down the mirrors lining the walls, he caught sight of his reflection. For years, he'd avoided looking too closely at himself, not physically, but emotionally. He saw now how much he'd let his own insecurities shape the way he treated others. His father had been a drill sergeant in the military, and though he loved him dearly, he realized he'd unconsciously modeled his teaching style after the harsh discipline he'd grown up with. "I've been so blind," he muttered to himself, shaking his head. All these kids ever wanted was guidance, not punishment. Word about the changes at the dojo spread quickly among parents, many of whom had considered pulling their children out after Mia's incident. But when they saw how Coach Kane was turning things around, they decided to give him another chance. Some even volunteered to help organize workshops or bring snacks for the kids after practice. The dojo became more than just a place to learn karate. It became a community hub where families gathered, shared stories, and supported one another. Mia, meanwhile, thrived under this new environment, with her grandfather's encouragement and occasional visits from Chuck Norris, who continued to drop by whenever he had free time. She blossomed into a confident martial artist. Her movements were still a little awkward at times, but there was a determination in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She practiced tirelessly, spending hours perfecting her stances and punches. Her favorite part of training, however, was sparring with her grandfather. Jack would set up makeshift targets in the backyard using pillows and cardboard boxes, laughing as Mia unleashed combinations she'd learned at the dojo. "That's it," he'd cheer, clapping his hands. "Keep your guard up and remember, relax. Your shoulders. You're doing great." But it wasn't just physical skills Mia was developing, she was also learning valuable life lessons. One afternoon, while practicing kata, a series of choreographed movements, she grew frustrated because she kept messing up a particular sequence. "I'll never get it right," she groaned, throwing her arms in the air. Jack knelt beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Sweetheart, nobody gets everything perfect the first time, or even the 100th time. What matters is that you keep going. Every mistake teaches you something. That's how champions are made." Mia nodded slowly, taking a deep breath before trying again. This time she focused less on perfection and more on enjoying the process. By the end of the session, she'd nailed the sequence almost flawlessly. As weeks turned into months, Jack found himself drawn back into the world of teaching. Though he'd sworn off formal instruction years ago, he couldn't resist the opportunity to share his knowledge with a new generation. Inspired by the events at the dojo, he began offering free self-defense workshops for kids in the community. These weren't traditional karate classes. They were interactive sessions designed to build confidence and teach practical skills. "You don't need to be afraid of anyone," he told the kids during one workshop. "If someone tries to hurt you, use your voice first, shout no loud and clear. If that doesn't work, then use your body, but always aim to escape, not fight. Martial arts isn't about proving you're stronger than someone else. It's about protecting yourself and those you care about." The workshops quickly gained popularity, drawing crowds far larger than Jack anticipated. Parents marveled at how their shy, reserved children emerged from the sessions brimming with newfound courage. Even Coach Kane attended a few, sitting quietly in the corner and observing. Afterward, he approached Jack with genuine admiration. "These kids look up to you," he said. "You have a gift for teaching that I can only hope to match someday." Jack smiled humbly. "It's not about me. It's about giving them tools to face whatever challenges come their way. If I can help even one child feel safer, then I've done my job." Meanwhile, Chuck Norris remained a steady presence in Mia's life. Beyond his role as a mentor, he became something of an honorary uncle, cheering her on during tournaments and offering advice whenever she needed it. "Never forget where you come from," he'd remind her. "Your strength comes from your family, your values, and your willingness to stand up for what's right." His words resonated deeply with Mia, shaping her approach not only to karate, but to life itself. She started volunteering at school events, helping younger students with their homework, and standing up for classmates who were being teased. Each small act of kindness reinforced the lessons she'd learned in the dojo, that true strength lies not in overpowering others, but in lifting them up. Back at the dojo, Coach Kane implemented several changes inspired by Jack and Chuck. He introduced monthly values discussions, where students could talk openly about topics like humility, perseverance, and teamwork. He also created a Student of the Month award, not based on skill level but on effort, attitude, and sportsmanship. Unsurprisingly, Mia won the inaugural award, much to her delight. When asked to say a few words during the ceremony, Mia stood nervously in front of her peers, clutching the trophy tightly. "I didn't think I belonged here at first," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "But thanks to my grandpa, Coach Kane, and everyone else who believed in me, I know now that I do belong. And I'm going to keep working hard to make you proud." The room erupted into applause, with Coach Kane leading the cheers. As Mia returned to her seat, she noticed tears glistening in her grandfather's eyes. For Jack, seeing his granddaughter shine wasn't just a source of pride, it was proof that the legacy he'd worked so hard to build was alive and well. Outside the dojo, the town of Willow Creek buzzed with excitement. News of the dramatic showdown and subsequent transformation spread beyond local circles, attracting visitors from neighboring towns eager to witness the famous dojo for themselves. Some came to train, while others simply wanted to meet Jack and Coach Kane. Through it all, Mia remained humble, grounded by the love and support of her family. She knew she still had a long journey ahead of her, both in karate and in life. But for the first time, she felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, with courage, integrity, and a heart full of gratitude. And so, what had begun as a painful moment of humiliation evolved into a story of redemption, growth, and unity. In the quiet town of Willow Creek, amidst laughter, sweat, and countless high fives, the true spirit of martial arts lived on. A reminder that even the hardest blows can lead to the greatest triumphs. Months had passed since the dramatic events at the dojo, and Willow Creek was buzzing with anticipation. The annual karate tournament was just around the corner, drawing competitors from neighboring towns and cities. For many of the students, this was their first chance to test their skills in a real competition. Posters advertising the event were plastered all over town, featuring bold letters that read, "Willow Creek Karate Championship, where legends are made." Mia felt a mix of excitement and nerves as she prepared for her debut match. She'd trained harder than ever before, pushing herself to master every technique Coach Kane and her grandfather had taught her. But despite her progress, doubts lingered in the back of her mind. What if she froze on the mat? What if she embarrassed herself, or worse, let down the people who believed in her? Her grandfather noticed her anxiety during one of their backyard practice sessions. "You're thinking too much," he said gently, lowering his fists. "Come sit with me for a minute." They settled onto the porch steps, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the yard. Jack leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Listen, sweetheart. I know you're worried about winning or losing, but that's not what matters most. Remember why you started karate in the first place?" Mia thought for a moment, then shrugged. "I guess I wanted to feel strong, like I could handle anything life throws at me." Jack nodded approvingly. "Exactly. Strength isn't just about muscles. It's about heart. When you step onto that mat, don't focus on the crowd or the judges or even your opponent. Focus on giving it your best shot. That's all anyone can ask of you." His words stayed with Mia as the day of the tournament approached. On the morning of the event, the dojo buzzed with energy. Students hurriedly tied their belts, adjusted their uniforms, and stretched their limbs. Parents milled about, snapping photos and offering last-minute encouragement. Even Chuck Norris made an appearance, arriving early to cheer on the participants. When Mia walked into the gymnasium where the tournament was being held. Her breath caught in her throat. The space was massive, filled with rows of bleachers packed with spectators. Mats covered the floor, each designated for different age groups and skill levels. Competitors warmed up nearby, throwing punches and kicks with fierce determination. "Wow," Mia whispered, clutching her bag tightly. "There are so many people here." Coach Kane placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You've got this," he said with a smile. "Just breathe, stay focused, and trust your training. And remember, you're not alone. We're all rooting for you." The preliminary rounds flew by in a blur. Mia watched as classmates fought valiantly, some advancing to the next stage while others bowed out gracefully. Each match was a lesson in perseverance, strategy, and sportsmanship. By the time her name was called, Mia's nerves had settled into a steady hum of adrenaline. She stepped onto the mat, her heart pounding as she faced her opponent, a taller girl with sharp eyes and confident movements. The referee signaled for them to begin, and the two circled each other cautiously. At first, Mia struggled to find her rhythm. Her opponent's attacks came fast and relentless, forcing her to retreat repeatedly. But then she remembered her grandfather's advice. Focus on giving it your best shot. Taking a deep breath, she planted her feet firmly and countered with a series of precise strikes. One kick landed squarely on her opponent's side, earning a surprised gasp from the crowd. Emboldened, Mia pressed forward, using everything she'd learned in the dojo. Though she didn't win the match, Mia fought with grit and determination, earning second place in her division. As the announcer called her name during the awards ceremony, she climbed onto the podium with a wide grin, holding her silver medal high above her head. The applause was thunderous, but the loudest cheer came from Jack, who stood beside Chuck Norris in the front row. Tears glistened in Jack's eyes as he clapped proudly. Chuck tipped his cowboy hat, whispering loud enough for Mia to hear, "That's how you do it, kid, never give up." After the tournament, the sense of accomplishment rippled through the entire dojo. Several students brought home medals, but even those who didn't win left with something far more valuable: confidence. Coach Kane beamed with pride as he addressed the group later that evening. "I couldn't be prouder of all of you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Today wasn't just about trophies or rankings, it was about showing up, working hard, and supporting each other. That's what makes us a team." He paused, glancing toward Jack and Chuck, who were sitting quietly in the corner. "Before we wrap up, I want to thank two people who changed my life, and this dojo, forever. Mr. Thompson, you reminded me what it means to lead with humility and respect. And Mr. Norris, your wisdom has inspired all of us to strive for excellence, not just in karate but in everything we do." The room erupted into applause as Jack and Chuck stood up, bowing respectfully. Jack raised a hand to quiet the crowd. "This dojo belongs to all of you," he said, his voice warm but firm. "It's a place where dreams are born and legacies are built. Keep training, keep learning, and never forget the values we stand for," Chuck added with a chuckle. "And remember, legends aren't born overnight, they're made through sweat, sacrifice, and a whole lot of heart." As the celebration continued, Mia found herself surrounded by friends and family, showered with hugs and congratulations. For the first time in her young life, she truly felt like she belonged, to the dojo, to her community, and to the world of martial arts. Later that night, as she lay in bed replaying the day's events in her mind, she realized something profound. Winning wasn't about beating someone else. It was about proving to yourself that you could rise to the challenge. Whether it was facing Coach Kane's harsh words, stepping onto the mat for the first time, or standing tall under pressure, every moment had shaped her into the person she was becoming. Her grandfather's voice echoed softly in her thoughts. Strength isn't just about muscles, it's about heart. With that realization, Mia drifted off to sleep, dreaming of future tournaments, new challenges, and the endless possibilities ahead. In the days that followed, the dojo continued to thrive. Coach Kane became known not only for his technical expertise but also for his kindness and dedication to his students. Jack's self-defense workshops expanded, attracting participants of all ages eager to learn from a true legend. And Chuck Norris, though busy with his own projects, remained a cherished part of the Willow Creek community, always ready to lend support whenever needed. For Mia, life took on a new rhythm. She balanced schoolwork, karate training, and helping her grandfather organize workshops, finding joy in every task. Her journey was far from over, but she no longer feared the road ahead. With her family, friends, and mentors by her side, she knew she could face anything, with courage, integrity, and an unshakable belief in herself. And so, in the heart of Willow Creek, amidst laughter, camaraderie, and countless acts of kindness, the spirit of martial arts lived on, a testament to the power of resilience, respect, and redemption. The months following the tournament brought a sense of renewal to Willow Creek, not just for Mia, but for everyone connected to the dojo. The changes Coach Kane had implemented weren't just surface-level adjustments, they were deep-rooted, shifts in how he approached teaching and leadership. He no longer saw himself as the sole authority figure demanding obedience. Instead, he embraced his role as a guide, someone who could nurture talent and inspire growth without resorting to fear or intimidation. Every morning, Coach Kane arrived at the dojo early, sweeping the floor and setting up mats before anyone else showed up. It became his way of showing respect for the space, for the art, and for the students who trusted him to lead them. During classes, he encouraged open dialogue, inviting kids to share their thoughts on techniques or ask questions about moves they didn't understand. If a student struggled with a particular stance, he'd kneel beside them, offering gentle corrections instead of harsh criticism. "Remember," he often said, "karate is like life. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep moving forward." His transformation didn't go unnoticed. Parents who had once been skeptical of his methods now praised him for creating an environment where their children felt safe and valued. Even some former students who had quit during his stricter days returned to train under his new approach. One mother summed it up best when she told him, "You've given my son more than just karate skills. You've given him confidence, and that's priceless." For Mia, the post-tournament period marked a turning point in her journey. With her silver medal proudly displayed on her bedroom shelf, she threw herself into training with renewed vigor. Every kick, punch, and block carried meaning now. It wasn't just about mastering techniques anymore. It was about proving to herself that she could overcome any obstacle. Her grandfather continued to mentor her, spending hours in the backyard helping her refine her form. One evening, as they practiced under the fading light of the setting sun, Jack stopped suddenly and placed a hand on Mia's shoulder. "You know," he said thoughtfully. "You're ready for something bigger." Mia frowned, wiping sweat from her brow. "Bigger? What do you mean?" Jack smiled knowingly. "I think it's time you started competing outside of Willow Creek. There are regional tournaments where you can test your skills against stronger opponents. It'll push you out of your comfort zone, but I believe you're ready." At first, Mia hesitated. Competing against local kids was one thing, but going up against martial artists from other towns, that sounded daunting. Yet, as she considered her grandfather's words, she realized she wanted to challenge herself. She wanted to see how far she could go. With Jack's encouragement and plenty of extra practice sessions, Mia signed up for a regional competition scheduled a few months away. In preparation, Coach Kane introduced advanced drills into her routine, focusing on speed, precision, and mental toughness. Chuck Norris even dropped by occasionally to offer tips, sharing stories from his own competitive years. "You'll face tough opponents," Chuck told her one afternoon watching her spar with another student. "But remember, the toughest opponent you'll ever face is yourself. Stay calm, stay focused, and let your instincts take over." Mia soaked up every piece of advice, determined not to let anyone down. On the day of the regional tournament, nerves threatened to overwhelm her as she stepped onto the mat. The crowd was larger than anything she'd experienced before, and her competitors looked fierce and confident. But then she spotted her grandfather sitting in the front row, giving her a subtle nod of encouragement. Beside him, Coach Kane gave her a thumbs up, while Chuck Norris leaned forward with a reassuring smile. Drawing strength from their support, Mia took a deep breath and stepped forward. Her matches were grueling, each one testing her endurance and resolve. Though she didn't win the championship, she fought with heart, earning third place overall. As she stood on the podium holding her bronze medal, she felt a surge of pride, not just for herself, but for everyone who had helped her get there. Back in Willow Creek, news of Mia's achievement spread quickly. Friends, neighbors, and classmates congratulated her, treating her like a local hero. At the dojo, Coach Kane held a small celebration, complete with pizza and cake. "This is just the beginning," he said, raising a slice of pizza and a mock toast. "Who knows what the future holds for all of us?" Indeed, the future seemed brighter than ever. Inspired by Mia's success, several students expressed interest in competing in upcoming tournaments. Coach Kane promised to help them prepare, emphasizing teamwork and mutual support. Jack, meanwhile, expanded his self-defense workshops, reaching out to schools and community centers across the region. His goal was simple: to empower as many people as possible with the tools to protect themselves and others. Chuck Norris remained a steady presence in their lives, dropping by whenever he could to check on progress or share wisdom. He often reminded Everyone that martial arts wasn't just about fighting. It was about building character, fostering resilience, and making the world a better place. Legends aren't defined by trophies or titles, he said during one visit. They're defined by the impact they leave behind. And trust me, this dojo is leaving quite the legacy. As weeks turned into months, the spirit of unity and growth only deepened within the dojo. Students worked together, cheering each other on during practice and celebrating victories big and small. Parents volunteered their time, organizing fundraisers and events to ensure the dojo remained accessible to everyone. Even strangers passing through town stopped by to watch classes, drawn by the reputation of a place where respect and kindness reigned supreme. Mia, too, continued to evolve. Beyond karate, she became a role model for younger kids, mentoring beginners, and encouraging them to persevere through challenges. Her confidence spilled over into other areas of her life. She spoke up more in school, joined extracurricular activities, and even started journaling to reflect on her experiences. One crisp autumn afternoon, as she sat on the porch with her grandfather, she asked, "Do you think I'll ever be as good as you were?" Jack chuckled softly, leaning back in his chair. "Sweetheart, being good isn't about comparing yourself to others, it's about becoming the best version of you. Look how far you've come already. You've faced fear, doubt, and failure, and every single time, you've risen above it. That's what makes you strong." Mia smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She knew her journey was far from over, but she also knew she had everything she needed to succeed: a loving family, supportive mentors, and an unshakable belief in herself. And so, in the quiet town of Willow Creek, amidst laughter, hard work, and countless acts of kindness, the dojo thrived, a beacon of hope, resilience, and redemption. It proved that even the hardest lessons, when met with courage and compassion, could lead to incredible growth. The slap that had once humiliated Mia had sparked a chain reaction, transforming not only her life but the lives of everyone around her. What started as a moment of pain ended as a testament to the power of forgiveness, humility, and the enduring spirit of martial arts. Life, like karate, was a journey, one filled with challenges, triumphs, and endless possibilities. And in Willow Creek, surrounded by people who believed in her, Mia knew she was ready to face whatever came next.